Next presentation is going to be on our district courts. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. I'm Evelyn Wilson, Chief Judge of the 3rd Judicial District of the State of Kansas. Our budget is derived from 2 primary sources, the State of Kansas through the Kansas Supreme Court's Office of Judicial Administration, and from Shawnee County. Funds from the state go almost exclusively toward personnel, though not all of our personnel. I appreciate being provided a suggested format. I plan to follow it, though somewhat loosely. Our mission and vision. From our strategic plan, the mission of the 3rd Judicial District is to administer justice with fairness, equality, and integrity while providing prompt, courteous, and accessible services. Our vision is that our mission can be delivered efficiently without sacrificing those things more important than efficiency, such as our rights, our dignity, and our humanity. You will see our budget is a flat budget, and we have Jared Harson here who may speak on behalf of Court Services. Sarah Mays is not able to be with us today, and I appreciate Jared being here. We also have Kathy Lenhart, who is, she often carries the laboring oar and has the institutional knowledge and ability and expertise, and I'm very, very lucky to have Kathy Lenhart that I can work with. I know you know this is I've only been Chief Judge for about 6 months now, and so I appreciate her abilities very much. And we have a couple of other people here also who are here that you may have questions for. First of all, our challenges. And I'd like to address first the docket. Our court has the highest caseload per judge in the state of Kansas. The clerk of the court's annual statistical report shows that 45,855 cases were filed in 2013. We have 15 district judges, an administrative hearing officer, and 3 persons who regularly assist us as pro tem or senior judges to process these cases. It is, however, a constant challenge, and we know now that there will be a district judge vacancy at the end of September, and there is new law that allows the Supreme Court to keep that position open now longer before it lists it as a position. And also the governor now has 60 days instead of 30 days to name one of the candidates that is submitted by our nominating commission to the governor to be named as judge. So that will be a challenge for us in deciding how all of those cases will be absorbed and handled and processed by the other judges. Space is also a challenge. Our current courtrooms, with the exception of the one at Ag Hall, are located in this courthouse. As you know, we also have a lot of other offices that are also located within the courthouse, and all under the auspices of your authority as county commissioners, as only one of many buildings that needs to be supervised and maintained. And so that I have listed some of the other offices that are here in the courthouse. Our court facility includes 15 courtrooms, an administrative hearing office, and a video conferencing courtroom. We have 6 what I would consider large courtrooms that are appropriate to accommodate a high-profile murder case, for example, that really does have the most attention of the community when those types of cases happen. We have 2 other courtrooms that can fairly easily accommodate a 12-person jury, but the others really are not practical for that purpose. Last week we had 3 major jury trials beginning on the very same day. And at that time, we had over 300 people here in the courthouse who appeared for jury duty potentially. Well, they were here for jury duty. Obviously, not all of them ended up on the jury. But One of our biggest challenges is that we have no place for our jury pool to gather. Thus, they scatter or wander the halls or sit on benches that line the various halls, waiting for the intercom or a bailiff or the time that they've been asked to come to a specific courtroom. As a practical matter, they cannot sit in the back of another courtroom because intercom announcements cannot interrupt courtroom proceedings. They do not have a common place to relax, to be educated, or to be updated. This phenomenon gives the appearance, unfortunately, of confusion, disorganization, and chaos. Worse, in my mind, it creates a situation where potential jurors are in the same hallways where witnesses and families of the defendants and victims all gather to wait for proceedings to begin in the morning and after breaks. One false word could lead to a fight or to a mistrial, which would then lead to us having to stop the proceedings and have people go home. And we'd have to start over. While those of us familiar with the process of jury selection understand why we need large numbers of people and why the process of narrowing those numbers is a logical one, that logic is not always readily apparent, nor is it always neat and tidy. Sometimes it's boring and sometimes it's time-consuming, and when a juror must spend his or her valuable time doing a difficult civic duty that we as a community require of them, we do not have a decent space for them to sit in comfort when they have a few minutes to themselves. Obviously, we don't have jury trials every day. Sometimes cases settle. However, I do know our criminal judges routinely book more than one trial at a time, knowing that some will settle. If all the trials scheduled in a certain division settle, then you may see an empty courtroom. We have encouraged people that if they're not using the courtroom, that they turn off the lights. So you may see a dark, empty courtroom. There's always plenty of work to catch up on, but the empty courtroom really is not usable space for something else, especially if the last trial washes at the last minute, as they sometimes do. And while we can encourage people to do things early and ahead of time, defendants, frankly, have a constitutional right to a trial. Even if there's no good reason for one, they still have a right to have a trial. And sometimes it is their decision, it's their prerogative, even up to the last minute, to say, look, I just want to avoid this. I want to avoid thinking about it. I don't think this is going to happen. The victim might not show up. And then on the day of the trial is when the defendant is going to know this is going to happen. There are people here ready to try this case, and the alleged victim is here, and that person is going to testify. So, at that time, the reality sometimes hits, but we still have to pay all those jurors to come that day. We don't pay them a lot. It's a token amount. It's $10 a day, and in many places that doesn't even buy them lunch. But they do that because over and over again I see that those people understand that this is an important thing that they do, and I see again and again that they do take it very seriously. I'm also quite concerned about the space that's set aside for prisoner holding. We do have a place where they're kept. If they're incarcerated, they're brought over from the jail to wait for the hearings here in the courthouse. And it's my understanding there are times when it's standing room only. I do not know what to suggest, but I believe it does need some focused attention. And we can address those matters and space issues that deal with the court, but we cannot deal with those matters that affect all of the space within this courthouse. For that, we need your help and guidance. I know you have a copy of the National Center State Courts study that's been recently drafted. This work was done at our request after obtaining a grant for that study. We still have some money left with which to take the information obtained from the study and move forward. And I hope you will work with us on this to the mutual benefit of the county and the court. Another challenge is technology. On May 12th of 2014, our court changed its case management system from the HP 3000 to full court. And we've also begun eFlex, and we're also looking at beginning batch filing. And this has been an enormous task. We had all of those things that were working very well before we changed our systems. We had batch filing, so we had limited e-filing. The larger eFlex project we did not have, but usually these types of projects are undertaken because you have an old system that's not working very well, and you have some other great system that is working in all ways and all manners much better than what you have. And that's really not the instigating factor here. What happened here is that we have the HP 3000, and HP wasn't making the 3000 anymore. And we were continuing to use the system, but we were having to get parts as needed from places that still had these types of systems, even as far away as Europe. And those spare parts were starting to run out, and we did not want to have a system that simply all of a sudden was not going to be supportable anymore. In many ways, the new things that we have are working fine. But a little background, I think, is important to give you, because the decision was made, rather than to just turn off the old system and turn on the new system and run parallel systems for those things that we needed that happened in the past. The decision was made that it would be better ultimately to go through what's called a conversion process, to convert the old data, translate it, to take the old data, translate it, and then convert it into the new system so that we have all that information. So we did that. And I think it's important to understand that that involved conversion of over 57 million pieces of information. And if that's not done perfectly, you're going to have some errors. So this project has been something that our people, IT, Kathy, I know, has been involved with it, Angie Callahan in the clerk's office, their staff, as well as the vendors and OJA, have been working for months and months on that, working very hard. And now that conversion has been done, and it's not to say it's working perfectly, but I was thinking in my head, I thought 3% error sounds pretty good. I mean, that's an A in college. But that means it would have over 1.7 million errors. And even a 1% error rate means 570,000 errors. So it has been extremely ambitious. And I got to say, on May 12th, when we turned on the computers, when we changed, I was grateful I didn't see gibberish, let alone expect that there would not be errors. But it's been extremely, extremely stressful on the staff to go through this process, and I just thank them very much for their patience, their perseverance, and just strength of character in getting through that. Deferred maintenance is an ongoing problem. We want to be good stewards with the funds that we have, but we have some issues that have been postponed, and they just need to be addressed. It's more than just about getting new carpet. Somebody said that, I mean, my carpet in Division 5 courtroom looks terrible. It's got tears and stains. But it also has a wheelchair ramp that people have tripped over. So it's counterproductive. We have wires in many of those courtrooms that can't be hidden, because I know just My courtroom is one of the old original ones from when the courthouse was built in 1963. And my walls are 2 feet thick. It's not, they didn't hang drywall, they poured concrete. And so when I inquired about getting a telephone on my bench, they eventually came in and they said, "Judge, we've broken 3 2-foot bits. Are you sure you need I said, "Oh my good heavens, I didn't realize it was going to be such a project." So, we cobbled when we put the wires on the outside, but it doesn't, it really isn't what it ought to be, and that needs to be addressed. Jail transports are something that has been brought to our attention. There are a lot of jail transports, and there have been a lot, but ways to alleviate those problems are being considered. Challenge every year is change in the law. Usually on July 1 that goes into effect. And ongoing issues of budget shortages from OJA. For most personnel, when OJA has a shortage of money, the squeeze comes down to the district courts. And we continue to have vacancies in court services, the clerk's office, court reporters, and law clerks. We are very grateful to the Shawnee County Commission for approving the position of 2 people in information technology department that we have, and for approving the position of a staff attorney. They have benefited us enormously, and we do, both in efficiency and in effectiveness. Now for some successes, and one is our use of criminal mediation. We have recently begun to use that more. The written comments describe the process. Procedurally, when a judge within the criminal division who is not assigned a case agrees to do a mediation for another judge's criminal case, then that involves a process whereby the judge has contact with the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the defendant, and also any alleged victim that might be involved. So they all can take part in the process of dispute resolution, if you will, and that they can give some ideas as to what they believe a reasonable resolution would be, thereby maintaining some, they're vested in the process. They maintain some control over the process, not entire control, but some input, some control, and sometimes it's just important for those people to feel like that they've been heard, that their position is known. And although trials are, of course, a legal and sometimes appropriate way of resolving disputes, it is an expensive one, not just for the trial and those costs related to the trial, but also for appeal costs and resources that might be required. Digital discovery is something that we've also increased. That's discovery generally is evidence, or usually police reports in criminal cases, other types of reports that are available to the prosecutor. Usually that is transferred in some way to the defense, and we're trying to do that more and more digitally, which avoids, of course, the cost related to paper, toner, copy machines, and that kind of thing. Sometimes they're printed, but we try to avoid that. We try to allow them to avoid it. Also, we have saved some money by eliminating one county position, that is of the lead contract attorney. Often a litigant has the right to be represented by an attorney, and if that person is indigent, then the court appoints someone to represent that person. And sometimes those costs are paid by the state. Generally, if it's a felony case, the Board of Indigent Defense Services pays those costs or bids. But usually if it's a child in need of care case, juvenile offender case, or misdemeanor cases, it's the county that absorbs that cost, and we have what we call panel contract attorneys. I know you're familiar with them. Commissioner Cook has served in that capacity in the past, and those are independent contractors who are paid to do that. And in the past, we did have a lead contract attorney who administered those contracts, took care of the hiring, firing if necessary, posting the positions, and also served in the capacity of being counseled sometimes if there were conflicts. But in April of 2014, that position was eliminated and the job responsibilities were absorbed by me as chief judge. That has resulted in some significant savings. And those savings, of course, were, I think, reinvested into the other position that we had as for the staff attorney, and again, we appreciate that. That's kind of an overview. I'd like to turn it over now to Kathy and the others. Thank you, Kathy.
Good morning, Kathy Linhart, Court Administrator. As Judge Wilson mentioned, we did turn in a flat budget as requested, and that involved us shifting some things around so that we could have one focus that we've wanted since last year. And I know Commissioner Cook spoke very eloquently about the need to compensate these contract attorneys at a slightly higher rate. It's a pretty minimal increase, but you will see that reflected in our budget this year, that we will be giving them a small raise with the plan to give them another raise in 2 years. We've planned out that far in our 5-year budget. We had to make some very difficult decisions in the process of deciding how to repurpose some of the money within our budget to keep that as a flat budget. And one of those difficult decisions was to take a sizable portion of the funding that we have passed through our budget to Kansas Children's Service League. Gail Kozad's here today. If you all have any questions for her, she will be happy to visit with you more about their programming. We have left a small amount of money, just over $15,000 in there, to assist them with a grant match for one of their programs. Sarah Terwelp with the CASA program is also here if you have any questions for them about their program. We've left a flat amount in there for CASA, as our juvenile court does assign cases to CASA and ask for their assistance and their involvement in the court process. So we felt that that was part of our mission as a court to provide service to the community and to the consumers of the court's services. And I would say again, I think Judge Wilson touched on this, that so much of what the courts do, whether it's in court services or the clerk's office or court administration, is work that it's very difficult to predict. So we try to base it on past history and what we expect in terms of filings, but you never know from one year to the next how many cases will be filed, how many juries will be needed, how many jurors will need to be seated. If it's a high-profile case, you need a lot of jurors to get a jury seated and have enough for alternates. Interpreters are another thing that we spend a sizable amount of money on, and that's increasing each year because of our population, and that includes both hearing impaired, Spanish, and other languages. We do use Language Line for languages that are not commonly occurring, but we have 3 people routinely that we use for Spanish interpretation who have been very committed to working with the courts and are always available to us. We have seen a tremendous savings on transcripts, and I think some of that has to do with the criminal mediation, and the judges have been very conscious of being a little bit conservative in when transcripts are approved and ordered. And the digital discovery partnership with the DA's office has been wonderful. I give our IT department, Stephanie's here, if we have questions relating to technology, as she provided some of the services to get that set up and the server on which all that information is stored. We probably are paying out about 1/3 of what we paid 2 years ago for discovery costs, and a lot of that is because of discs of interviews and things like that that had to be reproduced. So this is very, very good. The deferred maintenance, some of that we have to own. We all kind of came up in the school of use it up, wear it out, or do without, and I think we've kind of overdone it. We've wanted to be good stewards by virtue of having a plan, and the National Center report, I think, is helping us really get to the priorities of what we need to do first. We're very committed to the idea, if any space becomes available, to utilizing it to do a jury space. A lot of our courtroom space, it's not that we need more space, we need to figure out ways to use it more effectively. and make it more useful. Have certain courtrooms that are dedicated to the bigger trials, high-profile trials that have lots of evidence that needs to be there. And a judge needs to not have to come down off the bench in order to see the evidence along with the jury and the attorneys. And that happens today in some cases. So the National Center can be very useful to us, I think, in taking that to some next steps. And I know that you all are invested because we've talked about this and having a better, maybe long-range plan for this building. I don't know how far along you are with that, but if we can partner with some of these folks who have tons of experience around the country in planning courthouse space, we think that'd be a good way to partner to get us to the next steps of doing some of the work we need to do. The other two priorities, and I apologize, in our capital outlay request this year, you'll see that I have an awful lot of unknowns in there, and I know that doesn't help you with planning. I mean, I think that the money available through the grant could help with addressing one of the items, which would be the planning piece, having someone come in here to assist us with looking at ways to reconfigure space in the building perhaps, and that sort of thing. Actual remodeling of space for jury orientation, I think depending on the space, that could be done very reasonably. I don't think that would be a huge amount of money if the space became available. We're very committed to doing something more with video conferencing, and that relates to what Judge Wilson mentioned. The jail is transporting an awful lot of people over here, particularly for the child support contempt docket, that we think if we could do video conferencing for that, we might, timely, we might be able to make some improvement on the amount of time they spend hauling people back and forth. So we want to bring vendors in here to get some ideas about how we might do that. We know that in Douglas County they started out with some movable units for video conferencing, but you've got to have a base system in place, which is where some of the money would be expended. So eventually, and that will be going on this year, that we try to get started with those bids and understanding what the costs would be to do that. Because we'd like to be able to do those care and treatment cases that are done in B-22 right now. That space is not good space, and the system is old. I've talked with our IT people and Brian Weiss about teaming up on looking at some of those things because it has to be accessible to the jail on their end and the detention centers. So we'll do some teamwork on that to get that started. So video conferencing and improved digital is our biggest focus in terms of equipment. We've got 4 courtrooms that don't have digital in them at all right now, and so that limits the way you can use those courtrooms if you want to put things other than a regular trial in there, because you don't want to use court reporters for everything you do. That's an expensive option that we don't want to use. And you've got really very usable space with those 4 courtrooms. The ones that have digital, most of those are very old units. Some don't work very well, and they don't have the kind of capability that the new digital functioning does, where you can actually tell which person's talking because you've got different tracks. I don't explain that very well, Stephanie does, but so those are the other things that we'll be pursuing. I think that the courtroom efficiency piece, it's not as simple as just throwing aesthetics at it, and that's one reason we've put off a lot of this maintenance, is that we didn't want to put carpeting and paint in a room and say, there, we did that, and then have to come in and do raised floors later on to do additional wiring for digital and video conferencing and other sorts of things. So we want to plan for how we do one courtroom at a time, basically, to get the things that need to be done to make it most efficient for the type of use that is most needed. And I think we've got a lot of information that will help us make those decisions now. ADA is another huge issue, and of course once we start moving things around, we really we'll have to do something with the ADA accessibility. We're all very conscious of that in terms of, we had to take some seating out of one of the divisions, Division 11, so that we could have people in wheelchairs in there, and you've really got to use your creativity to get people in and out of the courtrooms that have particular challenges. Hearing impaired also is a struggle. We have units that people can use, but there's a lot of great technology out there now as we do this improvement. We'll want to look at some of those kinds of things too to assist with that. I want to say a little bit too about, Jared's here from Court Services, Stephanie's here from IT. But Court Services, you'll see in their capital outlay, they probably are the last set of offices in this building that still have the original curtains that probably were hung maybe early 80s. And we just never committed to putting up blinds. Everybody else in the building has blinds. So, you know, Sarah and I talked about, let's get that done. I can't imagine what we're contributing to people with allergies who have those curtains still hanging there. And many of them are about this much shorter than the windows. So, you know, that's just one of those things that we just need to get done. Carpet, that office gets a lot of wear and tear, and people coming in their front area that are coming straight from work, and they've got tar and who knows what on them. And so that carpet takes a beating, and that's another thing that she's got in there. And then replacement of some furniture. I would note, too, that Court Services is working very closely on the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative to try to increase some of the work in helping with detention population and the best services for supervision that can be provided. So that's an ongoing project. And the field team. The field team is a huge value, and we are so grateful for the commitment. Hey, Sarah, you want me to talk about this? Jump in if I say anything incorrectly. Many of you, if you're around, see them going out in the evening. We have embraced the idea that you don't do your best supervision work from a desk in the courthouse. And so it's been great in terms of making the work that the drug court does more accountable, because they are checking on people. It's useful even in situations where you have divorce or child needed care situations where there are allegations that kids are being left alone or there's drug or alcohol abuse going on in a home. Then the field team can check on those folks, make sure everything's going okay. They monitor curfews. Sometimes while they're driving around going to other places, they're doing it on the phone, but there's just a tremendous amount of good work that happens with that field team, and we're so grateful. We started that with a grant long in the past, and the county has been wonderful to keep that going, because I think it does provide a very valuable service to the accountability of people who are in the community needing to be supervised. And then I can't say enough about the value of the 2 IT staff that you all have assisted us with funding. Stephanie's group does a remarkable job, and during this transition with full court, as far back as just the planning with getting all of the data transferred over and that conversion completed, if we hadn't had those 2 people to do all of the technical calls and running around and assisting with things, really our system would have just been brought to its knees for some period of time. And so they have just worked many more hours than you can imagine, and we really can't say enough about how glad we are to have them. I think really that's about all I've got in terms of presentation. If you have questions or specific items in the budget you'd like for us addressed, I'd be happy to answer.
Start with Commissioner Bueller.
Well, space, and I know we've had conversations, and the commission has had conversations in the past about facilities and facilities management, and I'm hopeful that during this budget season we'll figure all that out, that we will find a way to address that, not only for this building, but we have some challenges at North Annex, and then we also are expanding with our Yellow Freight building, which I'm kind of calling South Annex. So, we have a good bit of planning, and I think we could really see some some savings if we make sure that we fund facilities in a good way. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I think it's critical in how it works with your area, with the jail, and again with all the other departments. So I hope that we can get to something. I don't know what that is yet. So.
Okay. Commissioner Cook.
I guess I'll start with maybe Judge Wilson. On the research attorney, that was originally an OJA position funded. OJA indicated there wasn't the funds. The state of Kansas and OJA, really, there's been a difference of opinion as to needs, putting it lightly. Is this continued to be a county, we're going to build it into the county budget, or is there a way to have that incorporated back with OJA?
Well, it's listed as a vacancy with OJA, and they haven't told us never, but I would say indefinitely, if we're gonna have one, it's gonna be a county position.
I mean, as I said at the time we filled it, it's a very difficult decision to fill it. It is a responsibility of the state, but not having one really isn't an option as well.
Well, there are many districts that don't have a research attorney funded by the state. So,
But no other districts have the same types of cases we do, school finance to be one of them.
That
we've
was
had
our
those-
argument.
Yes, we've had those conversations.
Yeah.
And the bottom line, I suppose, is that they get to decide up or down.
Okay.
And right now, their answer is no.
Okay.
And so then it's back to us to decide, you know, is this something that we think we really need? And we really do think we need
And,
that staff.
and the reason why I bring it up is that's 63,500 in our budget that we look at just right off of that,
Right.
which is, that's money that could be used towards, well, everything else.
Right. We do have interns. Our staff attorney, our research attorney supervises those interns. And so his assistance is also helpful in quality control of those interns who are, have not yet graduated from law school. They're eager, they're smart, they're good,
Mhm.
but they really need supervision to make them more reliable. And have found Matt Obermeyer's in that position, and he's terrific. He is extremely smart. He's a great writer. He's an excellent researcher, and he's provided very good supervision to those interns, and has been a great help to the judges.
And I can say that, really Shawnee County has always had very good legal research staff attorneys, going back even far as Judge Bruns, who's now in the Court of Appeals, Fred Patton. We have a history of really having good research attorneys here in Shawnee
Justice
County.
Moritz.
Justice
On the
Moritz.
Supreme Court now,
Yes.
and going up
To the 10th Circuit.
Circuit.
But the second question I had was on our jury pool space, and that's really identified as in the report as being one of the high needs is jury pool space. And again, I put this forth just as a question, as an idea. Eventually, when emergency management moves to our south annex, as we may start calling it, the sub-basement would become open. If that space would, I don't think it would be appropriate for a jury pool. I don't think jurors would want to go to the sub-basement, but that may be space that we look at if we have our research. I mean, that's a lot of space, and that maybe that space at the end of Division 4 might be, we look at for our jury pool room. It is isolated, it's far away from everybody and everything else. So I mean, I think the farthest point from the courthouse. But yes.
I'm reasonably sure because I know what duty you did.
Yeah.
You've walked through the hallway down there.
Absolutely.
That's the only thing that in my mind makes it a risky place. My dream would be, yes, to move the law library somewhere, knock that wall out, and turn that back into, you will remember when that area where Judge Johnson's court is now was a multipurpose room.
We used it
Yes.
we used it a lot for many multi-purposes.
Yes, and it was good for attorneys. It was a good place. You could have a play area, and because most of the people coming to court down there are going to have children with them. And in my perfect world, you'd have the little office, which is the research attorney's office, could be an area where people could meet privately, attorneys could meet privately with their clients. You have a play area at the other end. Anyway, that's in my perfect fantasy world, what we would do down there. Not to take anything away from your idea, but the
No,
traffic down in that hallway makes it difficult space.
I look at, the changes in the needs of the courtroom, the courthouse, as we look at functions in the future and what is actually in the courthouse and what needs to be in the courthouse. Looking forward, and I talked with Director Cole during his budget hearing about looking forward to the needs of the Department of Corrections, should we be looking at, in the next 15 years, 10 years, whether or not this building is meeting its current needs, or we should be looking at a whole new facility? And I know those are words that are very dangerous to even mention.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've already come in.
Yeah. But we don't have no other opportunity or time to really have a candid discussion about, in the next 20 years, I put 20 on that.
Okay.
Should we be looking at a new physical plant for the courthouse?
I think that's one of the things we can help begin the process of thinking and talking about openly if we bring the National Center back in here. They have planned courthouse space all over this country in buildings the age of this, in buildings older, and how you utilize and take space into the next decades. One of the things we'll have to deal with in this building, because we know the age of this building contributes itself to having asbestos, and I'm sure there's mold and who knows what else, do you think? And when you start tearing into ceilings and walls, assuming we could even do that, moving
Right,
walls in this
exactly.
building
Yep.
is no,
That's right.
it may not really even be a viable option.
Right.
And if that's what we learn, then we need to figure out how to make the space we're in as efficient as we can for the next 20 years, with the idea that we're working toward a long-range goal of a different building that would truly be able to meet the needs of the technology, the attorneys who come in here to try to do business, not having to stand in the hallway and talk to people. I mean, that's another thing you'll see in the report, is that, we know that what we've got set up is just not very amenable to attorneys having a private conversation with the person they're trying to represent, standing in the hallway with potentially jurors around somewhere, or who knows who's in the hallway. So those are all things we want to address over time. That's not really an answer to your question, but I think the easy answer is, I don't think this building is really suitable for the long haul.
But would that be then the next step for the report from the center?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there's potential for that.
And I would just add that report then along comprehensively of looking at facility needs countywide, because it just has a ripple effect.
Right.
Yeah.
When we change one thing.
Yeah,
it-
our
it-
focus
yeah.
is gonna be the courthouse
Right,
specifically,
right.
but it does affect others. If
It
you're gonna
does.
move someone else out of the building, then it's a domino effect.
And I think that's where focusing on the expertise
Right.
to do that, and
I mean-
space planning and.
Candidly, and we've had this conversation in different points in the past year and a half, it would be ideal if the court space was connected to the detention facility, so that we did not have a cost of transportation.
Mhm.
That would be an ideal.
It would eliminate a whole safety challenge too, that, you have to deal with. Yeah, there's a lot of cost savings there. Now, it's not gonna save what the bricks and mortar would cost, but over the long haul, there may be some real advantages to looking at that in terms of the efficiencies over the long haul.
And the last real question I had was, as we look at the video conferencing and improving the video conferencing, do we have a exact dollar amount that would need, or?
We don't. I need to get a couple of vendors in here to talk to us about how we get started, because I do think it's the kind of thing, Stephanie knows quite a bit about this and has talked to a lot of people about it and has some experience, and it won't be cheap. I mean, I'm probably underestimating that we could do 3 courtrooms for $100,000. But there would be some wiring challenges. One of my questions for them is whether we have to do a raised floor to do it without wires all over the
Right.
place.
And the reason I ask is, that really falls more under facilities or capital outlay rather than in the court's budget. And so again.
But I've got it in capital outlay.
Okay. All right, and that's really the
Okay.
questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Judge Wilson for coming this morning. It's always good when the boss shows up.
Yeah.
A couple of things. Maybe a compliment and a complaint. The first thing is your financial responsibility is admirable, and we certainly appreciate that. The second thing is the complaint is you talked about jury management, and people tell me, I got a notice for jury duty, and I plan my week around it, and I call in and they don't need me. How do we get the word out of what the obstacles and difficulties and challenges are for managing juries? I mean, do we go to Capital Journal and do a story? How do we do that?
Well, we have periodically done articles with the Capital Journal.
Okay.
Normally, though, it's been because we don't have enough jurors showing up, but maybe as more of an educational piece about helping, because people do get frustrated. And
Yeah.
I know you did jury duty, so you know
And I got
kind of.
frustrated.
Yeah, it is frustrating.
It
It's
is.
frustrating whether you have to come in or you don't have to come in. And it's frustrating for our jury coordinator too, in terms of how we plan around that. I mean, we get the information out as best we can through, as Judge Wilson pointed out, we often will think until Monday morning at 9:30 that we need X number of jurors, and then there's a motion hearing at 9 o'clock, and all of a sudden, we can tell them all to go home.
And it's, to me, in my experience, and I've been on a couple, it's very inefficient. And maybe by necessity, it has to be inefficient. But I think we need to tell that story and get the word out on why that is.
And I do find when I personally talk to people who are frustrated, and I know you all get calls from time to
Yep.
time from people, and I've always said, send it to me, I'm happy to talk to them.
Okay.
Once you explain a lot of that, while they're still frustrated, at least they can say, well, I understand it, and you took time to talk to me
Exactly.
about it. And I think as much of that as we can do is good.
Exactly.
And Commissioner
Yeah,
Archer, I
sure,
can
Commissioner.
just let you know, there have been times where I will be calling Judge Wilson's administrative assistant on Sunday afternoon because the state and the defense were able to reach an agreement on Sunday afternoon. Those are jurors who've already taken off for work.
Yep.
But there are also times when I can think of a specific example in case where Judge Wilson and I had a case that was a very serious matter, that we had not enough jurors, and we were going through the courthouse trying to find people in the treasurer's office, the hallway,
Oh, my
the
goodness.
court services. But they had the misfortune of being in the courthouse when we were short, and they were inducted into jury duty. They came to get tags and wound up being on a jury pool.
Oh, my gosh.
And that happens, and that's part of the difficulty of being in the court. In some districts, people have gone to Walmart and just started rounding up people and putting them in a van and taking them to jury duty.
That's funny.
We've only had to do that once or twice, but, and that's very disconcerting if that happens. But, one of the problems we have is that if we need a large number, sometimes our source of those numbers is not completely reliable in that we get them from driver's license lists and from voter registration lists. And people have to register to vote, but they don't have to unregister to vote. And so we may have somebody who, the address goes awry and it's not a card really very many people want to get in the mail. And so if they think, well, this isn't for me, they'll throw it away. And so we don't know how many people sometimes will come. We do
It is a challenge.
Right. But if you have a jury pool of 12, and you have 12 peremptory strikes on both sides, you need 36 people at a bare minimum. And so you have to clear 36 people. In order to clear 36 people, you usually need 60 to 90, because there will be conflicts or they're just not the right fit for that jury trial. So it's difficult.
It's our legal system at its
Yeah.
best and worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have a jury committee, and we talk all the time about ways that we've changed the summons a little bit to try to make it a little more understandable for people. We found that they, even though it's clear to us, we deal with it all the time, it's not necessarily clear to the public.
And that's what's critical, is that we get the story.
Absolutely. We really want to make people's experiences minimally painful as possible when they come in to do something like this.
One short answer I think is worth saying is that I have the jury coordinator on speed dial. And I think all the judges have that number. And so that, the number that the potential jurors call into, to the courts to determine, to to let them know whether they need to come is very up to the minute. I know she's changed that Sunday afternoons, Sunday evenings, you don't have to come in, and, so sometimes that's easier for them. Sometimes it's frustrating, because if they did take the day off, they may not know until the evening before, or the morning of, that they don't need to come in, but we try to let them know as soon as we can.
Okay, very good. Anything else, commissioners?
Well, as inefficient as it may be, it's still better than being an accountant. I have to
Two
put that
shots in the
I have to
room.
put that every time.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, and we're going to be recessed until 11 o'clock, and then we're going to hear from Vallejo. So, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.